Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. This episode of Slam the Gavel is sponsored by CPS Protect Consulting Services. A child protective services case is one of the most frightening experiences for any parent. Don't face it alone. Face it with confidence with Urgent Assist by CPS Protect. You can have access to former CPS investigators to make sure you preserve your rights and protect your family. If you're facing CPS involvement and aren't sure where to turn, their child welfare consultants can help you. Visit cpsprotect.com/subscribe and enter the coupon code Slam the Gavel for 60% off your first year of Urgent Assist. And this is available in all 50 states. I have another announcement. Bradley's mother, Narcus Golan, passed away in the fall of 2022. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to the Italian Social Services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system, where he can't speak or understand the language. He will then be taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul, 518-474-8390, to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. One last announcement. Go to the site if you can. PleaseDoYourJob.com. We need 2,500 more signatures to get a case reopened. That's PleaseDoYourJob.com. I've got 2 return guests on. I'm so happy to have Brian Vukadinovich back on. He was last on season 4, episode 69, 99, and 119. Then he was on season 5, episode 13. I also have Adrienne Miranda on. She was on season 4, episode 103, and I welcome you both to Slam the Gavel. And we have a lot to talk about in regards to someone not doing their job.
Yes, we do, Marianne. Thank you for having me back. Thank you so much.
Most definitely.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi.
And thanks for having me back as well, and also to be on here with Adrienne. It's actually an honor. I know she's been working real hard to get some justice for her son, Joseph, and it's just mind-boggling, everything that I've read about the case.
Right.
I know Adrienne's a loving mother, and all she's asking for is some justice here. And by justice, she's not demanding a certain outcome in the case. She would simply like a investigation to take place. I mean, there's been basically no investigation because of this prosecutor, Scott Shellenberger in Baltimore County. So I'm gonna, let Adrienne, discuss the case and so forth, and then I've got some things that, if we have enough time, I'll talk about it as far as the prosecution part of this
Most
situation.
definitely.
Definitely. Thank you, Brian.
I did contact him. I did contact Scott Shellenberger, but he did not answer me.
Right. I invited him to join this meeting too, and he did. He ignored me. He ignored me completely.
Well, yeah.
Brian, thank you. Thank you for that. Actually, I don't know that I would say there was an investigation. There wasn't a proper investigation, and there was so much as far as misconduct, withholding documents, perjury, obstruction of justice, falsifying evidence. There was so much done by certain police and Scott Shellenberger that it is just outrageous. It's actually like criminal misconduct on their part. It truly is. And my son's death, just to let everyone, all the listeners know, is declared a homicide by all of the medical examiners and the forensic engineer. It's definitely considered a homicide. It's confirmed a homicide. It's filed in Maryland Vital Records as a homicide. They studied all the facts, all the science, all the physics, all the evidence, the crime scene photographs. They even did their own reconstruction. And all of them, all 12, said this is a homicide and it is caused by an assault. My son was punched. He was given the, what do you want to say, 1-2, as you say, the 1-2 punch, and right into the path of the approaching bobcat to be crushed to death. And we know that it was the spotter, Paul Christopher Godwin, who acted in this way, committed the criminal act against my son that took his life. We know that. And to this day, there is no arrest. There are no charges. There is nothing, because Scott Shellenberger is going against the medical examiner's finding, which is truly unheard of. that a prosecutor is opposing the facts, the science, the physics, the evidence of experts, medical doctors, experts, and is telling us that a homicide is not a crime. How dare him? This is outrageous. This is beyond wrong. The injustice is again unconscionable, and it's despicable. And he knows that I've been trying and trying. You know, it was 2006, July 20th, that my son was murdered, was killed. And I've been trying with all my heart to obtain justice for my son, you know, even to bring in a grand jury, you know, something, because the medical examiners are ready to go to trial, even to this day. But Scott Shellenberger is he's actually falsifying the crime scene photographs. You can see where my son lay, how he lay, you know, underneath the bobcat completely, his head and face and neck crushed. There's only backup tread marks, and you can see clearly that it is impossible for him to be prone on the ground like that unless he was already on the dirt, on that road, and then the bobcat backed up, crushing his face, head, and neck, killing him. The only way he got to the ground on his stomach was because of the assault. And, you know, my son was almost 6 feet tall. They were maybe standing 3-4 feet behind the machine. Paul Godwin knew it was ready to back up, and he said he got irritated and he took it upon himself. So, you know, his demeanor was he was irritated to punch my son knowingly into that oncoming bobcat to be killed. And he is responsible for the death of my child, and he needs to be charged. My son's voice must be heard, and he deserves justice. My baby boy deserves justice.
He does, and it's a long time coming, and I don't know why Scott Shellenberger is not doing his job. You had sent me an article that had just come out. It what says Judge chides prosecution for delays in the Linthicum case and tells them to turn over evidence. How do we get a judge to force him to do this?
Right. And again, that's just another example of the criminal misconduct and the perjury and the withholding of evidence that Scott Shellenberger continues to do. And here's a judge, Mr. Linthicum was someone, I remember the story, it was in Cockeysville, Baltimore County, Maryland. And evidently the police, somehow they said they had to restrain him. And, you know, there was a shooting, and the mother, you know, this Mr. Linthicum's mother was right there. And she's saying the police, you know, did this, they harmed and, you know, went to kill my son. And now Scott Shellenberger, because the case is about to go to trial, Scott Shellenberger is saying he can't find all of the, you know, the body cam, you know, cameras that the police have. You know, they take the the footage that they take, you know, and he's delaying the trial, and the defense is saying, what is wrong with you? You're supposed to turn all of that over to us, all of that evidence, you know, all the body cam footage, you know, from the police. And he's saying, well, I only have I only have partial of it. I don't have the full. And why does he only have partial? He does not only have partial. He has the full police, you know, video recording. They all now carry cameras, the police do. And he's delaying it and telling the judge he doesn't have it all. So this judge, I think it's Robinson, is saying, you know, I'm not holding you in contempt yet, Mr. Shellenberger, but you better come up with all the evidence because you have it. And that's law. That's a legal requirement in a court of law for the defense to have all the evidence. So he's just, you know, aside from doing everything he did as far as misconduct in the brutal killing of my child, he continues to, again, withhold evidence, falsify facts, just beating people down that are trying to get justice. He has beat me down for over 17 years now, but I keep coming back, and I stand strong because I will be the voice of my son and I will have justice served. I know God will bring it. You know, we are a family of faith. I believe in my heart that God will bring it. And why we have to keep going back to this with a prosecutor like Scott Shellenberger, who isn't doing his job at all, who is committing intentional misconduct in every way. Why this continues, I do not know. And it must stop. It must stop.
Well,
Brian,
if I could just chime in here for a second.
please do, Brian.
Adrienne's absolutely correct.
Mhm.
It's a law. When Schellenberger does not, as a prosecutor, he has a duty under the law to produce evidence. And in a criminal prosecution type case, there's a decision. It's the standard decision in the United States. It's called Brady versus Maryland, that the prosecutors in every state and every county of the United States are obligated, they're duty bound to produce all of the evidence to the defendant. Now, if this clown is making excuses, he doesn't know why he doesn't have all the evidence, well, it's real simple. It's called cover up, is what
Yes,
it's called. That's what
exactly.
it's called.
Yes.
And I'm sorry to have to say this, but this judge, when he says, "Well, I'm not going to hold him in contempt yet," he's in contempt right now,
Yeah.
this
Yes, he
very
is.
moment.
Yes,
He
he is.
should be in jail in contempt. There should be no yet.
I agree.
If this
That's
judge
the
was,
law. That's the law, Brian. You're exactly right. But he keeps getting away with all of these like slippery lies. And again, even in my son's case, he's falsifying the actual crime scene photographs. Like, and they know it. They know it, but they keep letting him get away with it. Why? Why, Brian?
well, because that's just how the system works. Marianne and I have had a couple of shows about this, and this is a problem that we have in our country. And you're highlighting the problem now, and I'm hoping the public actually starts getting some traction here on this stuff, because the law's the law. And one thing involved in your case with your son, let's let all the lawyers and the judges do their thing. But there's one aspect that we don't want to let into play here. That is the jury, the regular people, to make a decision. That's why we have a jury system in this country. And the
Amen.
system is making sure that it's protecting itself within its own circle. And yet the homicide, I mean, how in the world can a prosecutor possibly look the other way when 12 experts in the field of forensic science have already done an investigation and declared officially and formally that it was a homicide? And
Yes.
at the very least, you get into a trial and both sides are arguing their case. At the very least, everything that I've read about this case, it's at the very least a reckless homicide. A homicide is a homicide, and it's a felony. And
Yes.
that person needs to be prosecuted, and a jury needs to make a decision. And what this, I mean, I don't want to go too long here talking about prosecutors, because I've had my own experience. I'm going to give you one example here, if it's okay. There's plenty of Schellenberger cockroaches scattered all over the country. I'm here in Indiana, and we have a former prosecutor here. His name was Robert Shalagi. I had to go through a trial with this clown one time. And during my trial, the police officer switched affidavits. He testified at the trial that, Vukadinovich had empty beer cans in the car, told the jury I had empty beer cans in the car, and then I get convicted off of it. And then a couple of years later, when I file a federal lawsuit, the affidavit that he concealed was unearthed during the federal litigation, and there was nothing on there about empty beer cans. So he was allowed, this Shalagi knowing that that affidavit was concealed, he allowed this cop to get on the stand and lie and tell the jury something that wasn't true. Had he not switched the affidavit, he would not been able to do that. So to make a long story short here, well, I ended up, I presented all of that evidence to the governor of Indiana, Mitch Daniels, and then he issued a pardon on it. And then afterwards, this prosecutor, all this politics stuff comes into play. And then he told two local newspapers that I was convicted of resisting law enforcement, that was his most memorable case, which was a blatant lie. I was never even charged with resisting law enforcement. And then when I contacted the newspapers made a retraction and actually titled the retraction, Shellenberger provides false information. So, and then during his campaign for the prosecutor of LaPorte County in Indiana, he told the public that the prosecution that he brought against me was his most memorable case.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I took his deposition, I asked him, did you know about that affidavit that was switched and concealed from me? Well, the officer told me about it in passing. In passing. Well, you know what? You had a duty at that point, right then and there as prosecutor, to provide that falsified information to me, but he didn't. This is how prosecutors work, and they get away with it. So I maintain in your case with Joseph that there should not only be one prosecution, there should be two prosecutions. There should be a prosecution of the person that murdered your son, and there should be a prosecution of this Scott Shellenberger, who is concealing evidence in this case. As this judge says, I'm not going to hold you in contempt yet. Yet is a problem. He needs to be in jail now and indicted by a grand jury. That's what I have to say about this.
And I agree with you completely. And, you know, we want to believe and trust in our justice system. We want to believe and trust in judges, you know, certainly in juries. You know, you want a case before a jury. That's the people, that's us, for them to hear all the facts, all the evidence, all the physics, all the science. And it's all there. In my son's case, it's all there. We know exactly who and how Joseph was killed. And whether it be murder, murder one, murder two, manslaughter, it's one of those, that's for sure. Of course, it's reckless endangerment. Of course, that's there. I mean, it's a multitude of things that this Paul Godwin had done. But he took my son's life. He's responsible for taking my son's life. And like they say legally, but for this Paul Godwin, my son would be alive. Mm-hmm. He is the one that took my son's life. Absolutely. He knows it. He's trying to, you know, he's changing his story with the police like 5 different times with scenarios that are impossible. You know, even the medical examiner said, this is crazy. None of these scenarios are possible at all. The medical examiners even went out, got in the Bobcat, did their own reconstruction. They know exactly. And Paul Godwin says, well, I gave Joseph the 1-2, and puts in deposition, puts up his fist like a 1-2. Yeah, he gave him the 1-2 punch, and he knocked my son forward as the Bobcat was approaching, knowing my son would go down to the ground and be crushed to death. Any person that knocks, hits, punches someone into a 7,600-pound vehicle, be it a tractor, be it a car, be it a train, be it a truck, knows they're going to end up dead. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened to my baby boy. And for Scott Shellenberger to just sweep it under the rug, to just, you know, again, distort the facts, go against the medical examiners, go against the facts, go against the forensics, go against the autopsy report. What? Mm-mm. Why? There's no prosecutorial accountability at all. They answer to no one. Prosecutors answer to no one. Like, what about us, the people? You know, they are public servants. They're supposed to be there to help the people, to be there for victims, you know, to be there for families, you know, the families that are victims, you know, when their children, the loved one, their family member has been killed, has been murdered. manslaughter, or murder. Where is he? Where is he?
Well,
He's just
there was
ignoring us
right.
complete and covering up. Absolutely. He's gaining something. He's got to be gaining something by doing this.
Mhm. Well, there was a case about maybe 20, maybe even 25 years ago. And apparently there was a rock concert. There was a line, and a police officer told a young man to back up. And the guy was maybe trying to back up or whatever, but the police decided to punch him and knocked him backwards, and his head hit the concrete, and he died instantly. And you know what? They prosecuted him pretty darn quick.
There you go. There you go. And was he a prosecutor for murder, manslaughter?
I cannot remember.
But certainly for being responsible for taking his life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And as a result of the assault. Absolutely.
Do you
An
know
assault alone is a crime to the point of death.
What was there? Did the people did they have cell phone evidence when that policeman did that to that person?
There were so many people around that they were able to gather evidence from.
That's
I think,
why.
Yeah, right.
See, in Adrienne's case with her son, there was no cell. Like if somebody would have actually been able to catch that on a cell phone, and it would be out there in the public view, then the prosecutors and the judges then they get a little bit worried about things. Now we have visual evidence of what happened, and we can't cover this up and allow this prosecutor to conceal evidence. But when there's cell phone out, that's and that's sad that it should be that way. And in this case, with the forensic evidence, we shouldn't even need a cell phone video of it. But these guys, these prosecutors get way too much protection. This Shellenberger that I was talking about, he actually forged his ex-wife's name on a document during they were going through a divorce, and there was something involved with the house. So he forges his wife's name and also the notary public's name, which is a felony, and he did not serve 1 day of jail time. That's what's wrong in this country. The system is so infected. Like right now in Adrienne's case, where can she go? There's nowhere to go to get justice, because you can't count on the people that you're supposed to be receiving the justice from. I have a question. Where is the Attorney General of Maryland here? I know this has received a lot of public exposure in the news media. The Attorney General of Maryland had to see this. There's a civil rights division in Maryland, and also in the United States. There's a civil rights division in the Attorney General's office nationally, statewide. Why are they allowing this prosecutor, this cockroach prosecutor, Scott Shellenberger, to sit back and enjoy his freedom as if nothing happened, when he is in fact violating the law, the Brady rule, the Brady law? And this judge, I think we should be putting some pressure on this judge, because I'll tell you what, if this judge would put him behind bars, I'll bet you within a half a day, that evidence would suddenly be found.
That judge, Brian, excuse me, that judge is on a different case.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. It is on a
that judge was on a different case, that a man in Cockeysville.
That person should be, I should have said, not
right.
But
I do have to say, as far as my son, there were witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
The driver witness. There were 3 fellows from Mexican descent that actually saw. They're back in Mexico. They sent them back to Mexico almost right away, but they actually saw. And like one of them screamed as he was like parking in the truck and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe what just happened to Joseph. What happened to Joseph Miranda? I can't believe it. I just saw it." And he started shaking, and one started crying. Jose Guadalupe, Pedro Sanchez, and Marcelino. They were the 3 that saw, but they sent them back to Mexico. So it's not like, you're not going to, when you have just to go back, Ryan, to what you said, when you have a crime committed, such as, such severe crime as was done to my son, when police aren't there, you're not going to have the body cam footage, and because the police aren't there when it happened.
Right.
You're not going to have a ton of witnesses because it was an area, kind of up on the property line. But the driver is honest and says exactly what happened. Paul Godwin is lying 5 different times, and the driver refutes everything Paul Godwin says and says, he's making that up. That never happened. Joseph never jumped up on a tire. It was going backward. He says Paul Godwin changes his story 5 times to try to blame the victim and cover it up. And that's a known fact. Even the driver says that. That's a known fact.
Yeah.
So
and my point wasn't that you should need cell phone evidence. My point was the reason that police officer got in trouble, and there was because of probably the public clamor that came with it because of cell phone evidence. So they made sure the judges knew we can't sit back on this case because the public can see this. In your case, the public can't actually see the visual of it happening. But there shouldn't need to be that kind of a standard. There is no standard.
No, there's
for cell
enough
phone evidence.
facts and evidence that that the medical examiners have. Medical examiners, with Scott Shellenberger opposing them, it's like saying he thinks medical examiners are worthless. Really? You think medical examiners are worthless? I mean, that's like, if that's what he's saying, he's ignoring them. Typically, prosecutors use medical examiners and their findings for the very source of their case. When they're fighting, for a murder charge or, a manslaughter charge in a crime where somebody's life has been taken, where somebody's lost their life and been killed. And mine, he's just completely negating everything by the medical examiners, not listening to them at all, doesn't care what they say. And he's actually, the crime scene photographs, I tried to send you both the crime scene photographs, but you weren't able to open the file. If anyone saw the 2 pictures that are in the one document that I have that my lawyer prepared, you can see what happened to my baby. You can see him laying there. He's almost 6 feet tall. He's laying there on the ground, flat on the ground, prone on his stomach, underneath that bobcat, with the left rear tire behind his left shoulder, his face, head, and neck completely crushed. There's just a pool of blood coming out. And you can see exactly what happened. You can see it. You can see it. The only way my son got to the ground was from Paul Godwin. My son doesn't nap on a dirt road. He wasn't like, oh, I'm going to lay down here on my stomach and like take a nap. No, nobody does that. He got there because of Paul Godwin's attack on him, assault on him. And my son died because of it, ends up dead. He's responsible for taking my son's life. And the very definition of a homicide is when a person's life is taken at the hands of another. That's the very definition of a homicide. And the cause, which the medical examiners have exactly right, manner of death homicide, caused by an assault.
Adrienne, let me ask you a question here. Shellenberger is currently still the state's attorney there in Baltimore County. Is that correct?
Yes, he is. He almost lost the last time, but 2 years ago, there was a primary election. He almost lost to a very good man, but he ended up winning by only 1,800 votes because of the mail-in ballots.
Okay, let me ask you a question here. Has there been in any way, any effort to bring in a special prosecutor for this case?
Yeah, we've tried the special prosecutor. I'm trying to think of his name before, but he wouldn't get involved.
Well, I don't know how many counties there are in Maryland, but
24.
There's 24 counties.
Yes.
That means there are 24 state's attorney prosecutors in the state of Maryland. So any one of those 24, and it doesn't even have to be the main state's attorney. It could be somebody on the staff. So 24 counties, there's probably over 100 prosecutors in the state of Maryland. Any one of those prosecutors could be assigned to this case as a special prosecutor under the law. In fact, here in Indiana, not very long ago, there was a judge who lost his. They closed his court down for some reason, and then he was a lawyer, and then he found out he had his hand in the cookie jar on some estate cases, and he got caught. And then a special prosecutor was brought into the case. It was like a volleyball game. It went to one county, to another county, but they finally got a special prosecutor. So in your case, there is no doubt there needs to be a special prosecutor. Nothing's going to happen in this case with Joseph as long as Shellenberger is the one calling the shots in your case. Mm-hmm. That is the reason in our country we have special prosecutors, for that very reason of what you're going through. So I would suggest strongly that your efforts should all be going towards getting a special prosecutor. The news media needs to pick back up on this case. I've read a lot of articles about this case. The news media needs to start putting some heat out there. The politicians in Baltimore County and in the state of Maryland need to start focusing in here, and there needs to be a special prosecutor assigned in your case. That is where I strongly suggest that you start taking your efforts. Just because one as I said, the person I was just talking about just a second ago, it went to several prosecutors. It gets to be like a volleyball game. Well, I can't do it, because they don't want to get politically involved. So they just keep going until they find one. In Maryland, there's over 100 prosecutors. If you have 24 counties, they can do this to every prosecutor in Maryland, and one of them will accept the case. I have never heard of a case anywhere in this country where they try to get a special prosecutor. It's going on right now nationally with Trump's case. There's a special prosecutor nationally in Trump's case right now, where I'll see all that stuff. I'm not talking about the politics of it all, but I'm just making the point. Special prosecutors are common, and they're very common in the states. You need a special prosecutor. You need to demand that the system puts forth the situation moving forward to contact the prosecutors. They usually start out with the adjoining county, and if they can't get a prosecutor from there, then they'll go to the next county out, and they just keep going until they get a prosecutor. Believe it or not, there are some honest prosecutors out there that actually want to see justice, and at some point
I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are. I haven't met them yet. And I wanted to ask Brian, so you're saying that the jurisdiction is not a matter there? I thought if it wasn't their jurisdiction, a prosecutor could say, I cannot take the case because it's not my jurisdiction.
There is no jurisdiction problem whatsoever. I guarantee it. It is in fact, this former judge lawyer, he was finally prosecuted in a county 2 or 3 counties over, is where they ended up with prosecutors over there. It was at least 2 counties over in his case. I am 100% certain. Generally, on a special prosecutor case, probably more times than not, it will go to a prosecutor in another county, because it's the closer it is to the action, the harder it will be to get a prosecutor locally. For that reason, that's why the law allows for prosecutors. There is absolutely no jurisdiction problem with it whatsoever. You can look on the map, and whoever the furthest county is in Maryland, a prosecutor in that county could come into Baltimore County and be the special prosecutor.
So I would need to contact them and request that they look at all of the evidence and everything in my son's case. And
well, yeah, see, because if they're not willing to do it, what you need to do, was there ever any court action at all filed in this case at all from a criminal standpoint?
No.
Anything. There was never a judgment. Okay.
No.
So what you need to do.
He called it an accident. He has declared my son's case an accident and closed it. And that's why my petition is to have him reopen my son's case and have it put before a grand jury. Let a grand jury decide. Let them hear the facts, the science, the physics, the evidence, the crime scene photographs, you know, all the statements made by the perpetrator and statements made by the driver and statements made by a very good senior, excellent senior homicide detective that my son's death is in fact a crime. Detective Richard Bechtel, who did do that and took it to the medical examiners as well. And again, Shellenberger's just throwing all that out. Doesn't care what the homicide detective says, doesn't care what the medical examiners say, doesn't care about the autopsy report, doesn't care about the crime scene photographs. He's falsifying the crime scene photographs. He's actually falsifying. You know, there's only backup tread marks. The driver says he was backing up. The perpetrator says it was backing up right in the police reports, but Scott Shellenberger says, no, the Bobcat was going forward. The Bobcat was going forward and your son jumped up on the left-hand tire and fell through. What are you talking about? Fell through? That's impossible. It's impossible. There's only 16 inches between the side tires.
Well,
there's an undercarriage under the belly of the Bobcat that sits 9 inches off the ground. My son had no injuries below his neck, none. You couldn't do that. A contortionist couldn't do that. It's impossible. What Scott Shellenberger is saying and making up is falsifying the crime scene photographs, the facts, the physics, and he's using an impossible scenario, a lie, a complete asinine, impossible scenario.
Well,
that is what he's doing. He has no business even being a lawyer, any kind of lawyer. He should be disbarred is what he should be.
Well, did I read this right? Were there two young ladies raped in Baltimore County, and then he let that slide, cover that up as well?
Oh my God.
Yeah. He had the police go and destroy the evidence, destroy their rape kits, and threaten the two young ladies and said, if you keep pressing on this, your sister's going to lose their job. You better stop and shut up. And they destroyed their rape kits. Yes, he did. Scott Shellenberger had his police do that. It was all in the news. He was indicted. Scott Shellenberger was indicted for that because the girls won a civil case, but he was indicted. But because it's Baltimore County, nothing happened to him. He was just, I guess they had the girls, I think, got $100,000 each, but it doesn't come from, Scott Shellenberger's pocket. It comes from Baltimore County. But that's what he did.
Adrienne, let me say two more things here about this special prosecutor thing. Not only can you get a special prosecutor to come into Baltimore County for your case, but you also, under the law, can have the entire case transferred to another county. This is what's done typically when there's a lot of media exposure in a certain county. And what they'll do is they'll say, we can't get a fair jury here because of all the media exposure. And they will actually move the entire case into another county.
I think that's what needs to happen.
At all. That's probably your best scenario. I mean, you definitely want a special, you want Shellenberger's hands completely off of this. So you want a special prosecutor for sure. And actually the ideal situation would be for that special prosecutor to have the matter taken up in his county or her county of the special the law allows that.
Okay, so even if the case even if he's closed it, even if I've got every document there is, but even if he's closed it, another prosecutor from another.
Shellenberger, you mean closed it?
Yes.
Oh, he's trying to play the role of judge and jury here.
Right.
Is what he's doing. He's not the judge and jury. He doesn't have the final decision, and there's no statute of limitations on murder.
No, there is not.
This clown Shellenberger closing the case so he can conceal his own corruption in the case, that doesn't fly at all. You have no statute of limitations problem. You have no jurisdictional problem. The only problem you have is this. You have Scott Shellenberger, the cockroach prosecutor, who has already done other things with women that have been raped, concealing evidence and so forth. And certainly in Joseph's case, everything that's happened, I'm not going to take the forensics experts' opinions on these things. I'm going to do what I want to do. And who knows why that decision was made on his behalf. I got some questions about that.
Of course.
That would happen, for sure. But if I would suggest to you, put all your efforts into bringing in a special prosecutor and having the case transferred, venued out. It's called venued out to another county.
Okay.
It has to be in Maryland, but it has to be in a county in Maryland. The law is very clear that you can do that. Now, what I would do if I was you to get things started, there's two places I would start. I would contact the chief judge of your court system where you are there in Baltimore. Every court jurisdiction has a chief judge. Contact that chief judge and state your case to him. We need a special prosecutor here. The prosecutor here is unfit to be the prosecutor here. He's acting in a corrupt manner here. He's concealing evidence and so forth. And there's overwhelming evidence of murder here. A jury needs to hear this. This prosecutor refuses to do what he's supposed to do under the law and effect justice. So I'm not going to say demand a special prosecutor at this point, but I would certainly request one and see which direction the wind is blowing with that. And then I would be demanding one. If they say, no, we're not going to do it, then I would just simply outright demand one. Be nice in the beginning. I'm a reasonable person here. All I want is justice for my son. We know this prosecutor is concealing evidence and ignoring the forensics experts. We need a special prosecutor. And this case should actually be taken up in another county, a change of venue from this case. And then I would also contact the Attorney General's office of the state of Maryland and state your case to them as well, because the Attorney General can step in here, because the Attorney General of Maryland, he represents all the people of Maryland.
And so that's Anthony Brown. Yes, he's a good man. He's a good man.
That's who you and throw in some of the articles about this. Let the Attorney General see, you know what, we're this situation here is, it's been in the news media. Things are being hidden because as soon as they see things that are in the news media, it kind of raises their eyebrows a little bit, and it could give them a little bit of a kick in the hind end to get things going with things.
I did contact the former Attorney General. Well, it was Doug Gansler, then it was Brian Frosch, and they basically hung up on me. They basically just hung up on me, said, we don't want to hear from you again. You'll never get justice. This administrator said, a female, I think her name was Peggy, but they were very, very nasty, nasty.
Well, that's the problem with our system, right away. Well, if it involves another one of our brethren, well, no, it's hands off. We're going to, that's going on all over the place. That's why the news media needs to stay involved in this case. Perhaps you could do a press release, send it out to all of the news media, especially the ones that have already covered the case. I am, on behalf of my son, going to request that the chief judge of our district, of our court system here, open this case and assign a special prosecutor to this case. Do a press release on it. Let the news media kind of get that out there as well. Let that judge see that this is under the public eye, because that will be very helpful. I don't know who the chief judge is there. Again, judges have a tendency to want to protect their, one another as well. But
they do.
Then again, sometimes you do run into one decent judge out there, and even if they're not so clean, if they see the media attention, then they have to be a little bit more careful. That's exactly how I would be approaching this from this point on.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. All wonderful recommendations. Thank you so much.
You know, all we
Yeah,
want to
the,
see some justice here. You know, you're a grieving mother here all these years now, and all you want is for this thing to be investigated and properly prosecuted. And that investigation that we talked about a little while ago, an improper investigation is tantamount to no investigation. Putting something out there for show that, well, we did this and we did that. You know, if you look the other way and you concealed evidence, that is tantamount to no investigation. There needs to be a special prosecutor brought in here. News media in Maryland, grab onto this case and start asking yourselves, why is Shellenberger not in jail for concealing this evidence in this case, for not allowing the forensics experts that the citizens of Maryland and in Baltimore County are paying the salaries of these medical forensics experts. Yeah. And that's the reason they're there.
And Scott Shellenberger, we're paying Scott Shellenberger, we're paying all their salaries, our dollars. You know, they work for people. And, you know, it's just, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that this, I would have never thought this, like, had it not happened to me firsthand, you know, I would have never believed that our justice system could be this, like, why are they allowing this to happen?
No, it is. And I'm sorry to have to say this, Adrienne, but when you first contacted me and so forth and told me this, I wasn't surprised. I've been involved with this stuff for quite a while here now, and it didn't surprise me. It goes on all the time, and they get away with it all the time because people simply, at some point, they break the people down. Now, I can see they're not going to break you down. I can see that. But the system depends on, well, at some point here, after a certain time period, they're going to give up. You know, it's just almost like, I can't go on any further. You know, you lose all your energy, you know, you don't sleep. But I can see.
I'll never give up. I'll never give up.
I know you won't. That's why we need to make the push here. And this, I know when this goes out online, I'm putting it on Twitter, and I'm going to put it on the interview that we're doing here, and I'm going to put it on any site that I can see that Baltimore County has on Twitter and so forth. So all the people in Maryland and Baltimore County that aren't familiar with this need to take a look, because all of the people of this country, when one person gets deprived of justice like you have, all of the people have been deprived of justice. All of them have, because we're all in this thing together. We all want justice. We're all human beings. And when the system steps on a person's rights, on a grieving mother's rights, in the face of all of this evidence, there's a serious problem. And the people in this country need to step up to the plate and put the pressure on. I'm not just talking about in Maryland. I'm talking about in this entire country. I'm talking about the Attorney General of the United States. The Office of the Civil Rights Division needs to step in here and investigate this and see, why is this cockroach, corrupt prosecutor, Scott Shellenberger, yeah, I'm naming him by name, and that's exactly what it is, why he was allowed to do this, look the other way, and not do his job, because there is no way that a jury would not be putting out a guilty verdict on something with this. And even if they did, it should go to a jury for the trier of fact, the jury to determine the outcome here, not this cockroach prosecutor who is himself declaring himself to be the judge and jury in this case. And that's exactly what's going on here.
Yes,
and we need to do something about it. There's no statute of limitations. There's no jurisdictional problem here at all. There are mechanisms under the law that are in place for this very type of situation. Special prosecutor, change of venue out of the county. that's the solution to this problem under the
I
law.
hear what you're saying, and I need to find those people, those good people with integrity and honesty that do their jobs thoroughly and completely, and say, I am a prosecutor. I work for justice. I work for the people, and I work for justice, and I certainly will take this one. I
Every
will.
single one of them take an oath.
There's a mountain of evidence, and even the medical examiners stand ready to go to trial. Still today, they said they always will be ready
Well,
to go to.
point that out.
Exactly.
Point that out when you
Right.
say, hey, the medical, see, they're not only, this is not only a direct slap in the face to you, this is also a direct slap in the face to the medical examiner's office. They came in and did their job, and they got to be thinking, oh, wait a minute. Well, what are we here for then? If we're going to come in, that's their job. They're the experts.
Yes.
Schellenberger is not an expert in forensics.
He's not a doctor. He's not a doctor or
Exactly.
medical examiner or scientific forensic expert. Not at all. He's not. He can't even take facts, science, and physics and determine, oh yes, this is exactly what happened. What the heck is he doing as a prosecutor? Why is he even in the position? Really?
What is the taxpayer paying him for? He doesn't do anything.
Correct, Marianne. Correct.
If he had any integrity, which he obviously does not, he could just voluntarily step aside. There's too much heat here for whatever reason for me. Prosecutors do that routinely, but he's not going to do that. He's got some kind of interest in this case of some kind. That's why there also needs to be a grand jury investigating him as well. Actually, those two things need to happen here. I would focus more attention to the special prosecutor being assigned and a change of venue. And then I would, from that point on, then we can start putting some pressure on to get this prosecutor under indictment as well. So, but I think that's what I think. Just I didn't know if there was an attempt made or not for a special prosecutor or a change of venue, but certainly that's what needs to be done. No question about it. None whatsoever.
I hear you.
Fully covered under the law. Both of those things can happen and should happen.
Well, I will certainly put that effort forward, and hopefully we can meet again, and I will tell you the results of that. And God willing, there will be something that is positive that comes out of those efforts, and a special prosecutor will take the case, or a prosecutor from another county will say, indeed, I will take this case.
Well, if they give you the runaround, either the chief judge or the state attorney general's office, if either one of them gives you, now, by the way, I would suggest don't call them on the phone, put it in written form. There should be some kind of an email address that you can find for each. Put it in written form, make them respond back in writing so we can hold them to what they said, because they can just say anything to you on the phone and later deny it or whatever. We want to know their official position, what it is in writing, so we can kind of hold them to it. So do it in writing with both of them.
Certified mail. Absolutely.
Oh, definitely. Brian, you always have the answers.
Well, I went through a lot of stuff in my lifetime with some things involving, the corrupt law enforcement system and judiciary and so forth. So I have a lot of experience with it. So I thought, well, you know what? Back in the day, I had to deal with my own situations with, which ended up okay. We've done shows on that before. So now I try to, if I can help some other people through my own experiences and learning what I've learned and so forth, that's what I do. And, Adrienne, definitely, we can see here, she's holding back her tears here, and that shouldn't have to be the case in this country. In this country, she shouldn't have to be like this to the point where she can't sleep at night. She should be comfortable knowing that we have a just system in this country. But we don't. And that's why we need to put the heat on, because there is a good system in place. But the problem is there are not good people in place within the system. I mean, it's a great thing that we have special prosecutors available under the law. It's a great thing that we had change of venues into other counties under the law. Those are great things that the
They
system,
are, but they all
but the-
need to do their jobs. They all need to do their jobs. And, you know, hopefully, of course, you're expecting that they will do their jobs.
And justice delayed is justice denied. And Brian, how can people reach you if they have any questions?
Well, I have my email address. I do have a website if anybody would like to take a look at it. It's www.brianvukadinovich.com. And I have a lot of things on there on legal things that, you know, that I've done and so forth, interviews, articles, written a couple of books and so forth. And my email address is right on my website. So it's, my email address is motionforjustice@yahoo.com.
And that's with a number 4.
No, it's actually the spelled out FOR.
Okay.
Twitter, I think has the number 4 in there. Twitter, I get mixed up with it too. Twitter has the number 4, Motion for Justice.
Gotcha.
But my website, my email address is actually the actual letter spelled out.
Excellent. Adrienne, if anyone can reach you,
My email is A as in Apple, D as in David, 1543@hotmail.com. I'm also on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn.
what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is Sky. It might be Sky7, I believe, but Sky, SKYYE.
Gotcha. Well, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, and Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children, where Brian Vukadinovich wrote the foreword. And you can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, iTunes, Anchor FM, and buy me a coffee to help keep the podcast going. Thank you so much. I appreciate both of you.
Oh, thank you, Marianne, and thank you, Brian, so much. I so appreciate all that you both do constantly and all the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adrienne. Appreciate your kind words, and thank you, Marianne, for having me back on as well. And we need to, you know, we're not done after this interview.
We're not done
here. We're gonna keep going here. We're gonna keep the heat on here with this.
Yeah.
You know, we need to have a special prosecutor and a change of venue, and then some justice will actually take place. I'm very confident if that happens, that you'll get justice here. But that needs to happen. Those two things need to happen for sure.
Justice will be brought forth, and I thank you both again.
Thank you. Have a blessed day.
You too.
Thank you, and both of you as well.